Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring something we all deal with, but maybe misunderstand a bit. Money.
Yeah, but not the spreadsheets and formula side of it. Right?
Exactly. We're looking at the human part, the psychology, the behavior behind it all.
We've got a really great summary here of Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. And it really flips the script on financial success.
How so?
Well, it argues pretty strongly that doing well with money is often less about, how smart you are mathematically and much more about how you actually act your behavior.
Right. So that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Pull out those core, kind of mind-shifting insights from this summary. The big idea seems to be that success isn't just IQ points. It's your habits, your reactions.
Exactly. And hopefully this helps you, the listener, see your own money decisions, maybe your whole money story, in a slightly different light.
Connecting the dots, maybe, between your past experiences and what you do with money now.
Yeah, precisely. Often stuff we don't even consciously realize is driving us.
Okay, so let's dig in. The first big insight from the summary. It's called No One's Crazy. What's that about?
It's this fundamental idea that, everyone's money decisions are shaped by their own unique background, their personal history.
So what looks odd to me might make perfect sense to someone else.
Totally. We're quick to judge, right? But the summary gives this great example. Someone who grew up really poor might hoard cash.
Okay.
To us, maybe that looks overly cautious, irrational even, in terms of investing. But for them, based on deep-seated insecurity, liquid cash feels like survival.
Makes sense. And then the flip side, someone from wealth might take huge risks.
Exactly, because maybe they always had a safety net. Failure didn't mean catastrophe, so their view of risk is just different.
Neither's crazy, just shaped differently.
Right. Your upbringing, your family's money stories, they leave a huge imprint on how you view things like risk, security, wealth itself.
But it's not just upbringing, is it? The summary also talks a lot about luck and risk.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge theme. Financial success isn't purely skill or effort. There's a big slice of luck in there.
And risk, obviously. Calculated risk.
Calculated risk, yeah. But also just sheer random luck sometimes.
Which leads to a warning in the summary, right?
Yeah.
About copying successful people.
Yes. Be really careful about trying to perfectly replicate someone else's success story.
Why is that?
Because their amazing outcome might have hinged on a lucky break, a specific circumstance that you just can't duplicate. It might be pure chance.
So don't chase specific unicorns.
Pretty much. The better approach, the summary suggests, is to focus on broad, reliable patterns. Things like diversification, the power of markets over the long term, stuff that works generally.
Not trying to reverse engineer one person's potentially lucky win.
Exactly. That one person might just be an outlier, a statistical blip.
Okay, this next point feels very now. The summary calls it never enough.
Yes, the danger zone. Constantly chasing more.
It's like a treadmill you can't get off.
It really is. And the summary stresses how vital it is to know when you have enough. To know when to stop climbing, stop taking huge risks, just to get more. Especially more than you actually need.
There's a quote in there that really hits home.
Oh, yeah, it's powerful. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need.
Wow. Makes you pause, doesn't it? Like, have I even defined what enough is for me?
Exactly. Is the next rung on the ladder worth potentially falling off completely?
And tied into that, there's this idea about true wealth often being invisible.
Yes. That's such a core concept. Real wealth isn't necessarily the fancy car or the big house. It's the money you haven't spent.
The savings, the investments.
The assets building quietly in the background. That's the stuff that gives you option security.
Okay, speaking of things building quietly, compounding. The summary calls it confounding compounding. Why confounding?
Because it's so hard for our brains to grasp intuitively. Exponential growth over long, long periods. It feels unnatural.
We think linearly, maybe.
We tend to, yeah. But small, consistent gains, just piling up year after year, decade after decade, the results become enormous. Almost magical, like you said.
The Warren Buffett example is classic, isn't it?
It really is. Most of his fortune was made after age 60.
Right.
Not because he suddenly got way smarter.
But because the money just had so much time to grow on itself.
Exactly. It shows that patience, just staying in the game consistently for decades, can be way more powerful than trying to be a genius market timer or chasing quick wins. Time is the magic ingredient.
So time helps you get wealthy. But the summary says staying wealthy is a different skill set.
Completely different. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. That's a key distinction.
Getting rich might take, what? Boldness?
Yeah.
Optimism?
Yeah, maybe taking some smart risks.
Yeah.
But staying rich, that requires something else.
Which is?
Humility.
Right.
And honestly, a good dose of frugality. The focus shifts from maximizing returns to just surviving.
Survival.
Yeah.
Like not losing at all.
Pretty much. Staying in the game is paramount. Avoiding ruin is more important than squeezing out every last percentage point. It's like defense wins championships in finance, you know? Don't get knocked out.
And surviving means you have to be okay with.
Yep.
Well, with things not always working out. This connects to the tails you win idea.
It does, absolutely. In investing, and maybe life generally, a very small number of events or investments drive the vast majority of the results. These are the tail events, the big outliers.
So most bets won't pay off spectacularly.
Right. You have to accept that. Embrace the uncertainty. Most things you try financially might just fizzle or do...
Or you only need a few big winners.
Exactly. Those few massive successes, those tails, they can make up for all the failures and mediocre outcomes. The trick is being positioned to catch them when they happen, staying in the game long enough.
So if you're doing all this, managing behavior, aiming for survival, hoping for tails, what's the ultimate point of the money, according to the summary?
This might be the most profound insight, I think. The highest form of wealth, the biggest dividend money pays, is control over your own time, freedom.
Not just buying stuff.
Not just stuff, it's buying autonomy, independence, the ability to wake up and say, I can do what I want today. That's the real prize.
That reframes financial goals completely.
Yeah.
But society kind of pushes another goal, doesn't it? Impressing people.
Oh, definitely. And the summary nails this with the man in the car paradox.
Okay, what's the paradox?
We chase wealth, buy the fancy car, the big house, thinking people will look at us and admire us.
But they don't.
They mostly admire the car or the house. They imagine themselves in it. They rarely give you, the owner, that much thought.
Ouch. That's humbling.
It is. And the deeper point is, people generally think about you and your possessions way less than you imagine. Real respect, the summary suggests, comes more from things like humility, kindness, generosity, not the flashy stuff.
Which circles back perfectly to wealth being invisible.
Exactly. Real wealth is the unspent assets, the savings buffer, the investments quietly growing. That's what gives you freedom and options.
Being rich might be visible spending.
While being truly wealthy is often about that invisible cushion, the money working for you behind the scenes.
So saving isn't just for emergencies then. It's building that invisible power.
Absolutely. The habit of saving is framed as crucial, not just for a rainy day, but for funding future choices, buying back your time, maintaining flexibility.
And it's less about how much you earn.
And much more about your mindset and discipline. Your savings rate, your conscious decision to spend less than you make. That's more controllable than just income for many people.
Puts the power back in your hands.
It really does. And related to that control, when you're making financial plans, the summary argues for being reasonable over being purely rational.
Okay, unpack that. Reasonable versus rational.
Well, a rational plan might look perfect on paper. Optimized returns assumes you'll always make the logical, unemotional decision.
Like a robot.
Exactly. But we're not robots. A reasonable plan acknowledges that. It accepts we have emotions, biases, life happens. A reasonable plan is one you can actually stick with through thick and thin.
So sticking with a pretty good plan is way better than abandoning a theoretically perfect one when things get scary.
Infinitely better. Because things will get scary or weird. The summary shouts, surprise! Life and markets are full of unexpected twists.
You can't predict the surprises.
Nope. But you can prepare for the fact that surprises will happen. You need room for error.
How do you build that in?
Margins of safety, having cash buffers, avoiding too much debt, which forces your hand in bad times. There's a great line, be paranoid when others are greedy.
So flexibility becomes key.
It's presented almost like a financial superpower. It lets you navigate shocks without being forced into terrible decisions.
And it's not just the world changing unexpectedly. The summary says we change too.
That's such an important point. You will evolve. Your goals, what you want out of life. It's probably going to be different in 10 or 20 years than it is today.
So don't lock yourself into super rigid long-term plans based on how you feel right now.
Exactly. You might feel passionate about something today, structure your whole financial life around it, and then feel completely differently later. Your plan needs some wiggle room to adapt with you.
Okay. Thinking about all these moving parts, these uncertainties, it makes sense that nothing is truly free. That's another point, right?
Yeah, every good thing in finance has a cost, even if it's not obvious dollars and cents.
Like what?
Like market volatility, it feels bad, it's stressful. But the summary argues it's the necessary price you pay for the chance of getting higher returns than safer assets over the long run.
Ah, the cost of admission for potential growth.
Exactly. Or patience. Waiting for compounding to work its magic. That requires patience. That's the price you pay for that massive long-term wealth accumulation. You have to endure the wait.
Got it. And you need to know what price you're willing to pay for which goal, because not everyone's aiming for the same thing.
Right. This brings up you and me, the idea that people are playing different financial games.
Different games.
Yeah. Think about it. A day trader is playing a totally different game with different goals and time horizons than someone saving for retirement decades away.
Or someone saving for a house down payment next year.
Exactly. What's smart for one person could be terrible for another. So the warning is, don't just blindly copy financial advice or follow what others are doing without understanding if they're even playing the same game as you.
That seems especially relevant with, like, social media finance trends.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get sucked into someone else's game, and often the games that get the most attention are, well, negative ones. The summary talks about the seduction of pessimism.
Why is pessimism seductive?
Because it sounds smart. Bad news, warnings, doom and gloom forecasts. They often feel more intellectual or insightful than optimism.
Optimism can sound naive.
Yeah, like you're not seeing the risks. But the source points out that, historically, progress tends to win out over the long haul. Wars, recessions, pandemics happen, but the overall trend is usually upward.
So staying rationally optimistic long-term is often the better bet, despite the scary headlines.
That seems to be the argument. Pessimism gets attention, but optimism often aligns better with long-term reality.
Maybe because pessimism makes for a simpler story.
That could be part of it, which ties into the next point, the need for narrative.
Our desire for stories to explain things.
Exactly, especially complex things like finance. When markets crash or a stock soars, we crave a simple, clear reason why. We want a neat story.
Even if the reality is messy, random, or involves loads of factors.
Precisely. So the advice is to be a bit skeptical of overly simple stories explaining complex outcomes. The truth is usually more complicated and less satisfying as a narrative.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And just to bring it all home, the summary touches on the author's own approach.
Yeah, Morgan Housel shares a bit of his personal philosophy, things like living relatively simply, really valuing independence over just maximizing income, avoiding debt, investing consistently for the long run.
So practicing what he preaches.
Basically, yeah. It grounds all these behavioral ideas in a tangible example.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If you had to boil down the core message from this summary of the psychology of money, what is it?
I think it's that doing well with money is overwhelmingly about your behavior. It's about patience, humility, saving consistently, avoiding catastrophic mistakes.
Less about complex strategies, more about simple, repeatable actions and mindset.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal isn't just having the biggest pile of cash. It's using that money as a tool to get what really matters.
Freedom. Control over your time.
That's the big prize.
It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from just numbers towards understanding ourselves, our own quirks and histories.
Turns personal finance into something much more, well, personal and psychological.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, going back to that very first idea. How might your own unique experiences, your financial upbringing, how might that be subtly influencing your money habits right now, maybe in ways you haven't fully considered?
Yeah, that self-awareness seems like the real starting point.